Nothing about Stephen Colbert's demise made sense on paper. The highest-rated host in America found himself without a future at CBS after dominating the network late night for 9 consecutive seasons. Colbert publicly accused his own corporate parent of paying what he described as a big fat bribe only days prior to the announcement, which undoubtedly didn't help. However, after splitting from CBS, Stephen Colbert eventually acknowledged the reasons behind his rejection of Jimmy Kimmel's invitation to appear on his program. The farther one delves into this tale, the more bizarre it becomes. We must begin at the beginning in order to make sense of it all. The king of late night, who didn't lose the ratings. Imagine waking up to find that the network's most popular late-night personality had just lost his show. That is precisely what happened when CBS declared on July 17, 2025, that Stephen Colbert's contract with The Late Show will expire in May of 2026. Hollywood was shocked to learn that Colbert would not be terminated following a decline in viewership or a series of setbacks. The exact opposite. The Late Show routinely outperformed ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live and NBC's The Tonight Show, starring Jimmy Fallon, to end as the highest-rated network late-night program in the coveted 11:30 time slot for 9 consecutive television seasons. When you consider where Colbert started, the story gets even more bizarre. Expectations were high when he took over David Letterman's renowned desk on September 8, 2021. For over 20 years, Letterman was the host of The Late Show. In contrast, Colbert appeared on Comedy Central's The Colbert Report as a fake conservative pundit. That was hardly a prescription for enormous success. Thanks in part to viral YouTube videos and celebrity games, Jimmy Fallon easily dominated the ratings race early on. However, Colbert steadily changed who he was. Donald Trump's opening monologues became crisper, more relevant, and more frequently discussed as the political atmosphere grew more intense throughout his first presidential campaign and administration. Colbert surpassed Fallon by the conclusion of the 26th and 27th television seasons, starting an incredible run that would stretch for almost 10 years. Even CBS management had officially acknowledged Colbert's dominance by the time the cancellation was announced. He was formerly referred to as the network's top performer at 11:30 by George Cheeks, president and CEO of CBS. However, CBS stated that ratings, performance, or the show's programming had nothing to do with the decision to cancel The Late Show. Rather, the business characterized it as purely a financial decision motivated by the evolving economics of late-night television. Many viewers were taken aback by the explanation, since it contradicted one of television's long-held beliefs, that high ratings ensure longevity. However, the television industry had undergone significant transformation behind the scenes. As viewers shifted to social media, streaming services, and on-demand viewing, traditional advertising revenue had been declining for years. Was this, however, the true reason? The monologue that changed everything 3 days prior to one of the most startling disclosures in the history of late-night television, Stephen Colbert entered The Late Show and shifted his focus away from competing networks, politicians, and celebrities. Rather, he went after his own corporate parent. Comedians seldom trash the firm that signs their paychecks on national television, so the moment stuck out right away. Colbert discussed Paramount Global's decision to resolve a lawsuit filed by Donald Trump regarding the editing of a 60 Minutes interview with then-Vice President Kamala Harris by CBS News. Paramount consented to pay $16 million, but instead of paying Trump personally, the funds were set aside for his future presidential library. While CBS insisted that their editing adhered to regular broadcast procedures and denied any impropriety, Trump claimed that 60 Minutes misrepresented Harris's interview in order to promote her during the presidential race. The substance of Trump's claims was questioned by many legal experts, thus Paramount's decision to settlement was especially unexpected. Because Paramount was concurrently negotiating a multi-billion-dollar merger with Skydance Media, which required approval from federal regulators, including the Federal Communications Commission, the timing was especially noteworthy. Even while Paramount disputed any link between the settlement and the merger process, the lawsuit's settlement naturally conveyed the perception that corporate considerations were superseding editorial freedom. Colbert didn't take long to comment. As someone who has always been a proud employee of this network, "I am offended," Colbert said as he opened The Late Show, referring to Paramount's payout as a big fat bribe. The audience exploded, but the comment had a different effect outside the auditorium. A comic making fun of a politician was one thing. Accusing his own parent business of making a payment that seemed to be intended to facilitate regulatory approval was quite another. 3 days later, on July 17, 2025, CBS declared that Stephen Colbert's contract with The Late Show will expire in May of 2026, a billion-dollar deal behind the curtain. Paramount Global's proposed merger with Skydance Media was valued at approximately $8 billion and promised to reshape one of America's oldest entertainment companies. The reaction extended far beyond Hollywood. Comedians like Jimmy Kimmel and Jon Stewart publicly defended Colbert. David Letterman criticized CBS's decision. Senator Elizabeth Warren and other lawmakers questioned the circumstances. With support from Redbird Capital Partners, the deal, which was announced in July 2024, would give David Ellison, the founder of Skydance, control over the merged business. One of the biggest broadcast networks in the nation, one of its most powerful news sections, and government regulators, whose approval was necessary before the deal could proceed, were all involved in the merger. The stakes were immediately enhanced by that approval process. The Federal Communications Commission has to review the deal since CBS owns numerous local television stations with federal licenses. Other federal agencies investigated various parts of the deal in accordance with communications and antitrust laws concurrently. Then, a number of well-known occurrences came together nearly at the same time. Due to the editing of a 60 Minutes interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris, Donald Trump sued CBS. Despite continuing to deny any wrongdoing, Paramount eventually consented to settle the case for $16 million. A few days later, Stephen Colbert openly denounced the settlement on The Late Show, calling it a big fat bribe. A few days later, CBS declared that Colbert's show will terminate when his contract expired. Paramount kept pursuing regulatory approval of the Skydance deal during that time. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr's remarks following the merger's approval added to the attention. According to Carr, the new management had stated that they wanted to reorient CBS News and deal with what they saw as prejudice within the company. These comments sparked controversy right away because they implied that one of America's most well-known news divisions may undergo major editorial changes. Leadership changes at CBS News picked up speed shortly after. During the merger process, longtime leaders, including 60 Minutes executive producer Bill Owens and CBS News President Wendy McMahon, left due to broader concerns over editorial independence and the company's direction. The choice of journalist Bari Weiss to the position of editor-in-chief at CBS News under the new ownership became particularly contentious. Weiss, the creator of the Free Press and a former opinion editor for the New York Times, has long been a divisive figure due to her outspoken opinions on topics like Israel and free speech, as well as her criticism of ideological conformity in big newsrooms. The overall picture is amazing. The simultaneous events of a late-night comedy show, a presidential lawsuit, a multi-billion-dollar merger, federal regulators, newsroom leadership changes, and intense political debate demonstrated the extent to which entertainment, journalism, corporate strategy, and American politics had become entwined. However, this declaration was just the start. The industry is fighting back. What could have been a normal corporate decision turned into one of the biggest public confrontations the late-night television industry had seen in years within hours of CBS announcing that The Late Show with Stephen Colbert will stop when his contract expired. Fans who were sad to lose a favorite host were not the only ones who reacted. Politicians, media watchdogs, journalists, seasoned broadcasters, and other comedians all offered their opinions. Many of the most well-known figures in the industry publicly questioned whether the official explanation covered the whole story. But CBS persisted in maintaining that the decision was entirely motivated by economics. The people who were most familiar with late-night television provided some of Colbert's most ardent support. Comedians like Seth Meyers, Jon Stewart, Jimmy Kimmel, and others swiftly stood up for their long-standing colleague. One of Colbert's most outspoken supporters was Kimmel. In order to encourage people to spend the evening watching Colbert's Goodbye, Kimmel opted to broadcast a rebroadcast of Jimmy Kimmel Live rather than a new episode. It was a remarkable gesture. Later, Jimmy Kimmel disclosed that, during his yearly summer break, he had asked Stephen Colbert to be one of the celebrity guest hosts on Jimmy Kimmel Live. It would have been the ideal method for the majority of TV celebrities to maintain their prominence while choosing their next move. Colbert, however, quietly declined. In an interview with Variety, Kimmel said that Colbert merely decided to leave the late-night spotlight almost as abruptly as he had been compelled to do so because he believed it was too soon. But Kimmel made one thing very evident. It was not a one-time offer. His invitation was not made in a vacuum. "Anytime you want to host," he continued, "I'll gladly step aside." In an industry that was evolving more quickly than ever before, late-night anchors had become allies behind the nightly ratings fights. Kimmel had personal experience with those pressures. He had spent years crafting some of the sharpest political criticism on television from his opening speeches, much like Colbert. Throughout his career, Kimmel made jokes about presidents from both parties, but his criticism of Donald Trump became especially intense. Trump frequently retaliated on social media, calling Kimmel untalented, terrible, and asserting that his numbers were plummeting. However, Kimmel's audience continued to be extremely durable, much like Colbert's. With every new monologue, Trump would frequently respond within hours, making their public quarrel one of the most iconic rivalries between a president and a late-night television host. Perhaps even more intense was Colbert's relationship with Trump. His show at first seemed like a conventional network chat show when he took over The Late Show in September of 2021. However, following Trump's election, Colbert tended to focus a lot of his opening monologues on the White House, congressional investigations, impeachment procedures, electoral controversies, and Trump's legal challenges. His program became appointment viewing as a result of the tactic. He surpassed Jimmy Fallon to become the most popular network late-night host by the end of the 2016-2017 television season, a title he would maintain for 9 seasons in a row. Over the years, Trump repeatedly attacked Colbert on Truth Social and other platforms, labeling him talentless, boring, and predicting that his numbers would eventually plummet. Rather, the reverse occurred. The ratings increased, which made Colbert's final cancellation all the more unexpected. However, he wasn't alone. Kimmel's personal experience also offered him a distinctive viewpoint on what Colbert was going through. After Jimmy Kimmel mentioned the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk in a monologue, ABC abruptly halted production of Jimmy Kimmel Live in September of 2025. Kimmel did not make light of or rejoice at Kirk's passing, despite the numerous headlines that followed. Rather, he criticized what he saw as attempts by some MAGA leaders to politicize the murder right away by depicting the putative gunman as someone other than one of their own fans. Kimmel claimed in the monologue that many in MAGA land were attempting to use the tragedy to further their political agendas. However, the comments immediately set off a political firestorm, with lawmakers, right pundits, and significant ABC affiliate owners like Nexstar and Sinclair accusing him of being callous. After the anger swiftly spread beyond social media and into the business sector, ABC decided to cancel the program indefinitely, while executives evaluated the circumstances. The suspension quickly gained national attention. Supporters contended that rather than focusing on the crime itself, Kimmel had been condemning the political response to it. Regardless of his goal, many claimed that his timing was improper. In an open letter supported by the American Civil Liberties Union, over 400 actors, comedians, writers, producers, and other entertainment industry professionals denounced the suspension as an assault on free speech. Even a number of conservatives who disagreed with Kimmel's political views openly supported his freedom to express his opinions without being removed from the air. While FCC Chairman Brendan Carr publicly denounced Kimmel's remarks, President Donald Trump applauded ABC's move. However, Carr later claimed that federal officials had put pressure on the network to postpone the program. After just 6 days, ABC changed its direction. The business declared that Jimmy Kimmel Live would resume following thoughtful conversations with Kimmel. The network claims that the initial stoppage was meant to prevent further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. And after talking with the host, management decided the show should resume. Days of harsh criticism from civil liberties organizations, other comedians, journalists, and numerous viewers preceded the decision. When Kimmel returned, he confronted the situation head-on. "It was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it," he said, fighting back tears at times during an emotional opening monologue. He reminded viewers that he had posted a message of sympathy to Charlie Kirk's family right after the shooting, and claimed he still meant every word. Kimmel clarified that his criticism was directed at people he thought were using the tragedy for political advantage, rather than Kirk himself. He also expressed gratitude to supporters of all political persuasions, expressing particular gratitude to those who disagreed with his opinions but supported his freedom to voice them. The 2 episodes, when watched in conjunction with Stephen Colbert's dismissal, strengthened the idea that late-night television had entered a much more dangerous period. For years, both anchors were among the most tenacious television critics of Donald Trump. Trump started publicly attacking both of them. Later on, both were embroiled in significant disputes pertaining to their networks. The extraordinary series of events has sparked a continuing discussion about whether corporate interests, political pressure, and shifting media economics are making it harder for outspoken late-night hosts to use comedy to challenge the powerful, as they have done for decades. What about the man himself, though? That's a different tale, though. The man behind the desk. Stephen Colbert's life was irrevocably altered by a tragedy long before he became the most known figure in American late-night television. 10-year-old Stephen was at home in Charleston, South Carolina, on September 11, 1974, when Eastern Airlines Flight 212 crashed, while trying to land in Charlotte, North Carolina. His 2 elder brothers, Peter and Paul, as well as his father, Dr. James Colbert, who was the dean of Yale University School of Medicine at the time, were on board. 72 of the 82 individuals on board were killed when the airplane struck trees just short of the runway, in the midst of heavy rain and poor visibility. He would say that the incident formed a permanent part of him decades later. The man that viewers would eventually get to know was significantly shaped by the loss. Colbert has frequently given his mother, Lorna Colbert, credit for keeping the family together following the collision, praising her incredible fortitude and sense of humor. He chose to embrace his faith rather than reject it, and he remained a devout Catholic for the rest of his life. Many viewers were taken aback by Colbert's reflections on sorrow